Okay, the time is 5:01. Today's date is April 28th, 2021. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Southampton Local School Committee. In attendance tonight for the school committee, Allison Radon, Austin Rogers, myself, John Lumbra, Julianne Hirschman is excused, and I believe committee member Greg Bennett will be joining us before the bottom half of the hour. We also have Superintendent Sullivan and our building principal is present. First item on the agenda is public comments. Any member of the public that has a connection to Norris may speak at this time. This is not meant to be Q&A nor a debate. Speakers, when identified, should state their name and connection to Norris and make their statement. Any supporting documents and or materials should be emailed to the committee at southsc@symbol SCM.hr.K12.org. Accept the motion to open public comment, 3 minutes per person, set the initial clock at 15 minutes.
So moved. And we have Greg on the line now.
Greetings.
Thank you, Greg. We're just starting with public comment. We have a motion by Austin, seconded by Allison.
Yep, right on.
Okay. Roll call to approve public comment. Allison,
Right on, aye.
Austin,
Rogers, aye.
Greg,
Bennett, aye.
and Lumber, aye. Any member of the public that wishes to speak, if you just identify yourself in the chat session, we'll call upon you in the order in which you identify yourself. Okay, and our first speaker is Elizabeth Cawley. Elizabeth?
Hi, Elizabeth Cawley. I'm a teacher at Norris. I sent you all an email, and I kind of, to admit, feel a little silly asking this because I listened to the meeting on Monday, but I was thinking about summer school, and I know Norris doesn't have air conditioning in the regular classrooms. So I was curious to hear if in the budget, I know exactly why people are laughing, but I just worry about masks. So I don't know if thought on anything was going to be considered, but I will say I listened Monday and it sounds absurd to even bring up, but I had emailed the school committee. So I just wanted to follow through with bringing up.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any other member of the public that wishes to be heard?
Oh, here we go. Yes.
Hello, Greg.
Hello. Was having some technical difficulties, but I can handle that.
Okay, just a reminder, we're in the public comment section. We're going to do a last call for any member of the public that wishes to speak before we start the rest of the agenda. Identify yourself in the comment section. Okay, we'll end public comment. The time is 5:05. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have the March 18th, March 23rd, March 29th, April 19th, and April 26th minutes for consideration. If I assume everyone's had time to read them. If there are no individual objections, we can take them up as a bunch, or if there are edits to be made, we can take those up singly.
I had no issues. I'm good with bunching them up if everyone else was.
Can I ask a question about one of them?
Sure.
On Monday night, April 26th, was there executive session after the meeting?
I don't believe so.
I think at the bottom of the minutes, it may have been a copy and paste, but it said executive session adjourned at 10 o'clock.
We definitely didn't go past 10 that night.
Yeah, no, that must be,
That's just a typo, yeah, just
let me pull it up. Hold on 1 second. But I appreciate the heads up.
No, I was reading the minutes and I saw that and I thought, well, I saw adjourn at 10 o'clock and I'm like, it was earlier than 10. And then I saw executive session and I didn't remember. Then I, of course, started to worry that I was supposed to be there and I logged off. So that's why I'm asking.
Okay. Yeah, it did say that, so that has to be corrected. Does anyone have the time that the meeting was adjourned on Monday?
No,
no, we'd have to go back to the tape.
Okay, so maybe we have to exclude
Yeah, so let's
that set.
exclude April 26th, and we'll get those amended.
Okay.
So I heard Allison make a motion to approve March 18th, March 23rd, March 29th, and April 19th as a package. Is there a second?
Second,
Seconded by Austin. Roll call. Allison,
radon, aye.
Austin,
Rogers, aye.
Greg,
Bennett, aye.
no, Lumbrough, aye. Okay, and circulation of warrants. Those have been signed off because of COVID. They're only sent to the chair. I did review them. Signed up on vocational transportation. Which is a large one, but that's just a procedural thing. And then a regular warrant, which nothing jumped out at me. I'm happy to forward those along. I believe Kathy does to the committee after I've signed them anyways. There were no correspondence, which brings us to principal's report.
Okay, do you want me to share that or is someone else sharing it? I can share, if I can share.
Yeah, let me just change the setting. You're good to go.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so as I had stated previously, our testing dates for MCAS, as of the last meeting, we were working on those dates. Those dates are here posted. They also went to parents today. We are finished with our preschool screenings. We conducted those at the beginning of the month, and we are going to be deciding about placement in the next coming weeks. Picture day is Monday, May 3rd. And beginning on May 3rd, Karen Milch, the middle school vice principal from Hampshire Regional, and Emily Krems, the middle school counselor, are going to be visiting over the course of the week all three of the homerooms for 6th grade to talk about what it will be like to transition to 7th grade and what the experience is like. Students will have an opportunity to ask questions if they have them, and it will really get the 6th graders excited about what is going to be happening in the very near future for them. Our kindergarten orientation night is scheduled for May 5th at 6:15. We are going to be doing that virtually. On May 6th, our school is going to be welcoming author and illustrator Marty Kelly. This is going to be a virtual visit via Zoom with 4th, 5th, and 6th grades. It's going to kick off our annual 6th grade book project that students will work on in the library and in their art class and in their ELA class. Some of the books that Marty has authored and illustrated are right here. I won't read them all, but it's very exciting for our students and to be able to continue to do some of the fun stuff we do, even though we're not having, visitors and whole school assemblies and things like that. So it's great that the PTO is funding this for Mrs. Mari, our school librarian. We're also discussing and beginning to plan special event to take place in place of field day, since it's probably not a good idea to have the whole school outside and inside and hot and sweaty. We still want to have some fun for kids. So Mr. Hallett and I are just starting the conversations on how can we maybe celebrate by grade level some sort of activities that will mirror what we would do for field day without having everybody out there at the same time. Mr. Hallett and the 6th grade team is also planning a 6th grade event at Conan Park, and that will be announced soon. Our enrollment for April 2021 is at 465 students, which includes 428 in-person students in pre-K to 6. 28 students continue to be remote, which is down from 40 the last time I reported it. We have 6 students that receive drop-in services only, and 3 out-of-district students at this time. Does anyone have any questions?
So it looks like we gained some,
Yes, we
a
had
good
some
deal of
students.
students.
Yeah, we had a few students come back from homeschooling that parents had decided to homeschool this year because of the pandemic, and also new students that moved to town. So we had a few over the last month, and it's rolling. I mean, it changes almost daily. Students either leaving, coming back from, well, we gave the deadline of students coming back from the Florida virtual like April 26th. We said that we would really like them to come back at a good breaking point. So a lot of parents had come back before then, and then on Monday we had a few more students return.
Any other questions? Okay, next, superintendent's report.
John, I'm gonna hold off. I don't really have a report. I've been working all day long on Southampton budget stuff along with some other things, and I think I'll save my energies for when we get to that conversation.
Okay,
If that's okay.
I wish you were there. PTO liaison.
They had a meeting last night. I wasn't able to attend. I didn't know about it until too late of notice, but I do know that they are currently wrapping up the spring fundraiser. They did the Good Eats to Go fundraiser, and I think that ended already too. I think pickup's coming next week for that. They are going to be doing that virtual paint night coming up, and they are also looking for more people to join the PTO or even take over some or run for some of the positions.
I can add on to that, Allison. I was there last night. They have $15,000 balance in their coffers. You're right about the Good Eats to Go and the spring fundraiser. The paint night was last week during vacation. There were a few that had attended, which was good. They funded some, Mr. Hallett is going to have a golf pro come and help students in grades 5 and 6 learn how to play golf. And he's going to also be taught how to teach golf to students. So that was funded by the PTO. And the Teacher Appreciation Week is next week, and the PTO is buying every staff member a lunch next Friday, and they ordered their lunch ahead of time. So that will, oh, I'm sorry, it's Thursday. Next Thursday. And then I have a few things planned that I haven't quite told the staff about yet. They're also donating $500 towards a senior scholarship award this year for a Hampshire Regional High School student that was at Norris. And then they are looking for a new board for next year. I did put that in my parent letter that I sent out today. So, and that's about it.
Okay,
I think the next meeting is May 18th.
we're gonna pass on the update from the Collaborative for Educational Services. That's Julianne. I believe she did attend the meeting last month, but we'll look for an update next month on her. School council.
That's me. So quick update on that. We had our last meeting April 14th, where we were updated on several things by Principal. We were given a budget update on priorities for the upcoming fiscal year 22 budget. We were also given an update on capital improvement items that were submitted to the town. And we were given an update on the reading committee that's working on selection of the reading curriculum that is to be purchased by the schools. So it was narrowed to 4 programs. and the committee has started working through presentations by the companies. I don't know if they've been completed yet. That's where it stood on the 14th. So that was pretty much all I got, unless Lisa has more that I missed.
Nope, that's very good. We are not finished yet. We have another meeting tomorrow afternoon with another company.
And just to clarify, that curriculum that you're currently exploring is to be paid for in the current existing budget.
Correct.
Okay, Greg, Hampshire Regional.
I cannot find my notes at all, so you'll have to skip me. I seem to recall we just talked about the basic things, long and interesting discussion on senior class trip options, sports participation, and the senior class breakfast options. I'm sorry, I don't have more details at this time.
Okay. Next is myself, the 5-district agreement working group. We have a meeting tomorrow night. We are, I think, at the 85% completion mark on putting down a written agreement for the 5 towns to use on things on shared services within central office. I believe we're making excellent progress on the cost sharing piece of it right now. And the reoccurring theme there amongst everybody is, can we do this in a fair and equitable way to all the communities? So I'm hopeful that we're making steady progress on that. And hopefully if tomorrow night goes well, I think we'll be ready shortly within a few weeks after that to probably get it out to everybody. We have a goal to complete this before Superintendent Sullivan retires for a second time. So, Elizabeth, does the association want to share anything?
Again, we have nothing to report at the moment. I just wanted to say hi to you all and hope all is well.
Thank you. And I don't see Matthew here, so we don't have an update from the select board. We did hear from him on Monday night, so I can update about last night's activities at the select board when we get to the, or Ken could also when we get to the appropriate section of the budget, which is next. So first Bobby, is there anything we need to know or address on the fiscal year 21 budget updates or transfers?
Well, I did do a report, but unfortunately I didn't send it off before I left and I don't have it on my drive here. So I'll have to share that with you at the next meeting.
Okay.
But I can say that we're pretty well spent down and there's not a whole lot of room for, any great spending. So
Okay.
we've held our own and that's really important. So that's all I have for 21.
Okay. So next we can get into we have the 22 budget update. Yeah, we can take that next. If everyone's good. Okay. So where we left off, obviously, we all met Monday night and we talked about the budget and we made cast some votes that reduced what ultimately should be our final. We need to finalize the budget from our point of view tonight. So before we can adjourn, the select board met last night with the finance committee, and I'll speak in broad strokes. And then Ken is here as the chair of the finance committee, and without objection, recognize him to speak and correct me or add on my comments. And round numbers, I believe that the town is, even after their adjustments last night, is looking at somewhere around an $800,000 issue system-wide. I did ask if they could give us a number to zero in on, a percentage-wise, and that wasn't, there wasn't an answer to that. I explained the 4.2% overage that we're starting with, just simply by taking in that out-of-district placement cost, so that it was without cuts. There was just no way we could just start at or be at the 2.25, let alone 0%. So I think there was a healthy discussion. I heard a lot of, I wouldn't say support. I heard a lot of discussion about whether or not they're going to put forward an override or not. But I believe it's fair to say they feel that they're at a standstill until we pass our budget and have a finalized number in. So, Ken, anything you want to add to my notes?
No, I don't think so, John. I think you were right on.
Okay. So I'll turn it back to, I don't think we need to go through the budget line by line like we did on Monday night. I think it's fresh in all of our minds. We did pass out some homework assignments. I don't know if we want to go over that. We wanted to see, one of the questions was, what was administration's thought process or recommendation for the school committee to consider on classroom sizes? Knowing, what the language is in the contract, so that's the maximum number of students we can put in the classroom. Has to be a average of 24 or less, 25 or less than 25. And then where we were with at the 6-foot radius, I suppose was the smallest classrooms we had. So does anybody want to address that or speak to what you got the administration determined or would like to see?
I'd like to hear what her thoughts were on it too. I did have one question originally from Monday night, because we all know right now the 4th grade class is gigantic, but we did end up adding that 2nd grade teacher because at that point we were trying to just get in at 6 feet. So I don't remember what the numbers were for the 2nd grade, the current 2nd grade.
So.
Sorry, put you on the spot with the number.
No. The grade 2 going to grade 3 next year is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
The 2nd grade class this year for next year is 64.
Okay.
And I have in my notes that you said that grade will have, oh, never mind. I had down that it will have 3 teachers with 22 students per room. Is that?
Yeah, so on this sheet that's being shared right now, for grade 3 next year, 3 teachers, it would be, 21.3 students. I think on the paper that I had previously shared, I probably rounded it, that's, you could take it either way.
Yeah. So what's on the screen now is there's a couple paragraphs or explanations. The second paragraph is a direct quote from the collective bargaining agreement that we have to be mindful of and stay in compliance with that. But then you have a chart by grade, the projected fall enrollment as known today, understanding that this is subject to change right up until the first day of school. Average class size if there were only 2 teachers per grade, average class size if there were 3, and average class size if there were 4. And I believe the highlighted number corresponds to administration's recommendation. And you want to have a discussion about 5th grade. So there's a highlight missing there, what your thought process is, or
So I could jump in there for a minute and say, first of all, we wanted to speak to acknowledge the fact that physical or social distancing is a consideration. We don't think it will need to be a high priority consideration in the fall. The Commissioner of Education just said yesterday to us that he's expecting vaccines for down to 12-year-olds at least starting this summer. And in the big scope of things, given all the things we need to think about, if we needed to have a class or sets of classes high as 25, not that we want to do that, but if we did, the distancing there would be about 3 feet between students. And when classes are typically in the teens, like they are now, then the social distancing is typically maybe around 4 feet or so. So that's where the distancing piece fits in. And in talking with all the administrators, the numbers in yellow are where we are comfortable with where class size would be next year. And we wouldn't want to go higher than the things in yellow. What's not highlighted is 5th grade. And depending on all of the other variables that you need to think about in terms of reductions, when we're weighing the impact on students and student learning, if we needed to cut deep enough, it's possible that a reduction of 1 classroom teacher in the building, if that was a cut, we would, if we needed to make a cut like that, right now we would say that would be by having class size of 25 in 5th grade instead of 18.75. So going to that level of class size in grade 5 would result in the reduction of 1 classroom teacher from across the grades.
Okay. So I think it's evident to me why kindergarten and 1st grade, you're saying the 4 teachers, but for the record and publicly, maybe why you're thinking those numbers should be at 16 and not 21, 22.
Yeah, I think Elise is better positioned to speak to even what the literature says about class size being more important at the low elementary grades than anywhere else.
I didn't hear John's question.
I think I understand why you're going with more teachers in the lower 2 grades, but just for the record, could you just give?
Oh yeah, I mean, just like, Michael said, when the younger the students are, the more important it is for them to get those foundational skills. And when you increase class size, you're not able to give the attention to the students that they need it, and the youngest learners in K1, even in 2nd grade. I mean, I wish we could go to 14, but we have to cut, if we have to cut a teacher, a full-time equivalent person, then it would be, we're going from 24 classes to 23. And small groups are very important in the younger grades in order for them to receive that sort of support and instruction, so that we don't fall further and further behind with, a class of 21 or 22. These kindergartners come in, they're young, 5s sometimes, they can't tie their shoe, they can't zip their coat, they can't open their milk, they can't, all of those things. And especially since we've been in a pandemic, and a lot of those preschool students didn't come to school in preschool this year because of the pandemic. So we're going to get students coming to kindergarten who might not have had a school experience yet. So it's going to be most important. And then the kindergartners going to 1st grade, those kindergartners had the pandemic, a year ago when they were pre-K, and now in kindergarten, they had the experience of being hybrid for a period of time and remote for a period of time, and then in person. So it's really important to keep those class sizes low in the early grades. Not that I believe that 25 in a class in 5th grade is anything to smile at either, because it really, really isn't. But if I have to make a decision and if there has to be a cut, I feel that, that's the least impactful. And we're still not able to take in school of choice students here either. you know, it's pretty dire looking.
With being a teacher also, I don't know any teacher who would ever say a bigger class size is better for any grade. So I completely agree. The part that I question a little bit, looking at the numbers, is kindergarten all have a para in the room. So there's 2 adults, where when you have 5th, 6th grade, they're with 1 adult, and the behaviors kick in big time with older kids versus younger kids. And when you're shoving 25 of them in a room with 1 adult versus 16 in a room with 2 adults, that's where I start to question it. I can't see 1 adult with 25 kids working and then being able to, you know, score well on MCAS after having all of that we've been through as it is.
Yeah, I
I
understand.
mean, I hear you. I teach the younger grades, so I know what it's like. I mean, I've never had a class size below 20 besides this year, but I feel like they have 2 adults in the room. It's not comfortable. I'm not saying it's a good thing. It's not a good thing. No class should have to be that big, but 25 to 1 room is with 1 teacher is, especially come heat. I mean, we're talking about questioning heat in the summer with masks, and imagine the heat with them then.
Right.
So I would also add that I think the it's optimistic to say that the pandemic is going to end at all, or even by the fall. There's a triple variant that was discovered in India that has caused over 2,000 deaths. You know, being that's one of the most populous countries on earth, it's not a large share of their population, but that's how COVID started, was with 1 town, and it spread to the entire world. So I'm concerned at the 25 number that we're not going to be able to service those kids, and we'll be stuck with what we're stuck with this year. I think that we did okay with 4 feet. I think we were pretty successful with that. I'm just worried about not having any leeway or wiggle room. And I'm not saying, unfortunately, I'm saying cut no teachers and force it back on the town. I live in town, so I consume the same services as everybody else. I rather get my license to carry and take my chances overnight with crime than lose a teacher. It's just my own personal view. I'm on the public record now saying that. I'm eligible for the license to carry. I rather do that. I think that the consequences to
Too many.
having that many kids, we're going to have to, and then we'll be stuck with, we can't go remote, but we can't distance. And I just don't think we're going to get what we need to get done. All the class sizes seem to be going up to much higher than I like to see, but I mean, if we kept our current level of staffing, could we have 4 teachers in the 5th grade?
If we kept our staffing now, yes.
Okay.
If we didn't have to cut.
It's only if we have to do a reduction in staff that we have to.
Correct. And I think the question was, how many students can physically fit in a room 3 feet apart? What are we comfortable with, right? And so 25 students can be in a class 3 feet apart in 5th grade.
And just we can keep talking about this in the context of, we've reworked some of the cuts and some of the ways we might apply ESSER funding, which I am anxious to show you. And actually we have this reduction, the reduction of a classroom teacher, as the last thing we would do out of anything else we would offer to cut first.
So just for data purposes, we have 26 classrooms, and right now
24.
Okay, we have 24 and one of
Well,
them,
we have 2 preschool classes, so I think that's where you maybe got the 26, but if we're talking K to 6, it's 24.
24, and that includes, that 24 right now includes that additional second grade that we put in.
No,
Okay.
that
so
is
we-
not considered a class. That's just a sub for the rest of this school year. That is not in our regular budget.
Okay, so
So it's,
in this current year,
Yes.
you have 24 classroom teachers.
well, we have 25 with the substitute in second grade when we opened up another class for distancing. So we had 24. We have 20, I would say 24, but if you want to call it 25, you can, but I don't consider that cut. If you were gonna say we have 25 now, and we need to go to 24, it's almost like, moving the shell game, because it's not 25. It was never 25. We opened up an additional classroom with substitute money to create physical distancing. There was never gonna be another classroom teacher position added to the budget for next year with a class, so it's 24. Michael, unless you think I'm wrong, I mean, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, and that's the starting point for building the budget from 21 to 22. So, yeah.
Right, no, I just.
Yeah,
that
I
was-
just want to be clear that,
I know, and I just want to put, so. Excluding the long-term sub who's paid on a different line item, there are 24 classroom teachers.
yes,
And if we go with 4 teachers in 5th grade, we're at 24. With all the other highlights here.
we're still at 24. If we don't cut anything, correct. In 5th grade could have 4 teachers.
Correct. Right.
To add this to the mix means no cut. Yeah.
Yes. Any questions on this piece? All right, so I think we just take it in as knowledge right now, and then we come back to it if and when we're discussing that position, the position.
John, is there any way I can get a copy of those reports?
That's what was up on the screen?
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, thank you.
Where do we want to go next?
So in the last, whatever it's been, 48 hours, we spent a lot of time, the administration looking closely at grant money and the situation, kind of continuing to and analyze from where we left off Monday night. I have a document I emailed to you all about 15 minutes ago that we could use to drive the conversation about where to go for reductions. I'm uncomfortable with sharing it now. Usually a document like this, you would have had days and days to look at it in advance of a meeting, but for different reasons, that's just not how this is unfolded. But if you'd like to use that, I could put it on the screen, and I think I even sent it to Ken as an email, and we could talk about that.
I
It's
would
in-
love to see that.
I'd love to see it on the screen. It's in Excel format and I can't get that on my laptop, and I can't do it when
Okay.
I'm looking at this, so.
All
But if
right,
I can get that later on, I can look at this now, so that's fine, thank you.
okay. Let me just try and get it teed up in a way that can be viewed as best as possible. So this is, you used a very similar document on Monday night, and this has been added to. And I'm just to make sure we're on the same page, I'll just talk about the pieces of it a little bit. At the top right here is the our total wish list that we started, that we came to the beginning of the budget year with. It's everything that Norris would like. That's all very reasonable things, prudent requests. And the amount of those that are increases are in this section here. and the increases not having to do with out of district placements or cost of living increases, but just the new things we would like, the total of those is $268,000. And Aliza and company worked really hard to prioritize those. And we went over this before, of increasing monies for substitute teachers, increasing a behavior specialist, increasing an adjustment counselor, and so on. And then you voted to reduce some of those a little bit. If getting rid of those was not sufficient, or in some combination was not sufficient, we then have this section here, which is what are things we would cut that existed in FY21. And it goes from the thing we would choose to cut first to our worst, the thing we would really hate to cut the most, in that order. So it goes from reducing a math interventionist half-time position to reducing curriculum supplies. And then last on the list is reducing the classroom teacher we just spoke about. Above that is the potential for reducing a specials teacher, which is the arts. And it's possible that in terms of having a school schedule that still functioned and provided teachers with prep time, one of those specials could be reduced. And we're not particularly comfortable about singling one out right now, but if we need to, we can as the meeting goes on. And that could possibly be done without eliminating a person's job, because they're, and we can explain why that is in a second.
Michael,
Yes.
just can either one of you tell us how many specialists there are right now? Just a grand total specials?
4 positions in the budget.
So the main new thing, and I'm sorry to springing it on you like this, but it's pretty high stakes right now. So we wanted to be as thoughtful as we could. Right here, I want to talk about this for a second. We went back and looked closely at the ESSER money. A few points to make. And we did mention this Monday night, the House and Senate version of the budget does not support the governor's idea of allowing towns to use some of this money to reduce assessments. I think it's probably likely that, and it also is not mentioned by the feds. So I think that probably will not survive the state budget building process. But either way, that's just one thing to think about.
Well, just a side note on that, even last night, the select board is still using as a placeholder 71 or 60 some odd $1,000 from Norris that they're using in their budget as an offset.
Okay. Well, what I have here to talk about would be what we might do if that did not happen. So the ESSER 2 money, which can be used starting right now and all the way through FY23, totals $114,000. The ESSER 3 money, which is coming through with the Biden administration, it's almost certainly going to be $230,000 for Southampton. It's not totally a done deal yet, but the DESI's allowing us to plan using that amount of money. And that amount of money can be used up through fiscal 24. And the reason, and in total, altogether, these will total $344,000. Typically, we would never suggest using, or very rarely suggest using grant money to fund ongoing expenses, particularly salaries. But seeing what a tight spot we're in, and the fact that we could get at least 3 years of spending using this ESSER money, it makes us a little more comfortable suggesting that we use ESSER money up here to support the BCBA and the adjustment counselor in the technology expenditures. The other thing I did today was talk to the person at DESE that's our go-to person for ESSER funding. And I said to her point blank, listen, there's information that leads us to believe that we could possibly use this money to pay the salaries of classroom teachers or music teachers or art teachers. And what is your take on that? And I have it in writing from this woman, Nancy Labrie, saying she doesn't think that's a very good idea. ESSER funds are intended to mitigate the effects of COVID-19. And you would have to really make a good case that using that money to support classroom teachers or specialist teachers really was connected to the COVID situation. She did say, when I described using it for adjustment counselors or BCBAs, that would be allowable, definitely. And also, she told me something just an hour ago that I didn't know. You could use ESSER money to reduce, to pay out-of-district tuitions. So what in talking with our team, we would like to suggest using ESSER money for the 3 positions I'm showing right here, and potentially even using ESSER funds, $25,000 of it, to reduce that large out-of-district tuition increase for next year. And so these are ways we could contribute to closing that gap using some of these funds. And the impact of those different scenarios is kind of what shows up in this third column here. And I'll stop talking there because that's a lot to process.
Can I just make one clarification? Michael, you just said that it would be used to support 3 positions. And just to be really clear, up at the top where you were just showing, that technology to support the one-to-one computer is not a position. That is
Thank
actually,
you.
just so I wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bobby. That's this here. And
Yeah.
and Kim is here, our tech director. Anywhere you want to dive deep, we've got some people that can talk in more detail, and she could talk a little bit about what that $17,000 represents and why we don't want to lose too much ground with things like internet capacity and so on.
If we can go to Kim in a second, but are you, I think what you're proposing here, or is this what the long-term plan is? Normally, when we're thinking about budgets, we're looking at a 365-day cycle, right? But because of the uniqueness of ESSER 3, being able to spread that over, what, 3 fiscal years, using a portion of it now and then holding the rest in reserve for 2023 and 2024, but possibly repeating the process versus taking the full, trying to take the full 230 in this year and then creating a bigger problem down the road.
Right. This, right. Yes, John, the things I'm highlighting right now in yellow, we could use ESSER money to pay for those up through FY24. So that's why that gives us a little bit of comfort of doing this unusual kind of approach.
And then potentially allows us 3 years to get certain other things under control that may help us reduce our requirement or need for out of district placements, right? Because now we have a larger window to plan.
Right.
Okay. Other committee members, questions, thoughts?
I would rather see moves like that than see losing a teacher. I mean, we don't have that. Well, we want those positions, don't get me wrong, but they're not physically already at the school.
I think we already said to cut the 10,000 from curriculum, didn't we?
I thought so, but I wasn't positive.
Yes, we did Monday night. That was one of the things.
That's what I, yeah.
Would be law, but you guys wouldn't approve my minutes, so.
So we went from 40 to 30, correct?
Yeah.
So under this are
So I have a question actually for Ken, maybe. So it's my understanding that we have to present, no matter what, we have to, as a town, present a balanced budget.
Correct.
So whether or not we decide to push an override vote or not, we have to have a balanced budget option. So if we were to kick to the town, now you have to reduce the rest of the budget, the whatever it ends up being, the 329.
Mhm.
What does that mean for the town? I know that's a loaded question, but
It means doing exactly what you folks have been doing over the last 48 hours, is going back over our line items to find out how we can come up with 340 or whatever it is.
but it would most likely have to come from, whether it's the school or other departments, it would have to come from people, I'm guessing.
I can't say that for sure.
Okay.
But I mean, obviously that is a category that, you know, if you had to delve into all categories, that would certainly be one as well.
Yeah. Because what it looks like from the numbers is the only way for the school to do it is to lose people. Like we don't have enough.
Well, we haven't decided that yet, have we? Isn't this all? This is just one of a couple of other possibilities, or is this the last?
this is what administration's coming back.
Well, this, yeah,
Okay,
this,
so
this would be our continuum of,
Okay.
of cuts, with getting down to this level down here at line 27 being as far as we've planned.
Yep. Okay. So am I right in saying that this is totaling, so that's $109,000 roughly that's coming out of ESSER funds? Those first three about 84, and then there's 25.
Yes, but for the two, anytime you use grant money to fund a job, there's 9% that gets kicked into some kind of benefits line that we don't have any control over, and Bobby could explain that. So there would be 9% off of those, off of that 30,000 and the 37,000 that would also be added in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 9% to put towards the retirement benefit. The way the government thinks is that they're already supporting, we don't pay into the teachers' retirement. So when they're giving us federal money, they expect us to put in that retirement piece, the 9%.
Right, okay.
Anybody else? Mike, I'm trying to open this document up now, Michael, but I'm assuming this is a formula, but I don't come up with that 223,884 number.
That there,
Correct.
that
I have a higher number by $25,000.
28 minus 29.
If I take the 438, 420, and I just back out all those minuses, my number's higher by $25,000.
Okay.
Maybe I missed.
Well, I did add that number in later, but let's see. This number here, the revised budget request, does include line the E25 in it. Let's see.
I get the 248, 884.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you just want to tell me what numbers seem,
I'm looking at the old document, that's why, sorry.
yeah.
You had an earlier document before you added
Well,
that.
yeah, this ESSER thing was added, very late in the day, right here. So that's an additional $25,000
yeah.
reduction.
Yeah, and I have the old document.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, never mind.
I had the same thing, John.
It's the numbers that the accountants pick up on. Okay. So if that would get us to, we'd be, under this scenario, it would be $223,000 above 4.9. So our revised budget would be the 5 million one, right? Out of district placement is within the operating budget. It's transportation that's outside of it. So that offset with the 25,000 would be within that group. So in the past 48 hours, the committee members have had time to look at all the numbers and the data and the reports. Did anybody see anything that we missed on the first couple go arounds you want to talk about?
I mean, I looked over it, and that's just such an astronomical amount that we have to cut. I don't even see where else we can go. Losing staff just shouldn't be an option. Coming out of a pandemic, you're supposed to be getting more staff and extra support, not taking away support. And the fact that they want us to try to cut that much is no words. I don't see where else it could come from without losing staff. And I really don't feel we should be losing staff.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was almost falling out of my chair last year when they wanted 40 grand.
Right?
This time
We'll take that now.
Yeah, I'll cut 40 grand. That's no problem. We can slash that right now. But $660,000, like we don't.
Absolutely ridiculous, that volume, that large a number that they're expecting us to cut out this budget in time when we need to take extraordinary measures. I made the plea last night at the select board, and I've been posting online, and we seem to have the parent population with us for sure, but in good conscience, we can't cut anymore.
I'm a little disturbed by the suggestion that the town would keep some of Norris's money on top of it.
Well,
Not surprised, but disturbing, yes.
What?
I think in fairness to the town, I think when they initially started working on their budget, all they had was the governor's budget to work for, and that was a line item in the governor's budget. I was surprised to hear that it was still there last night. But
John, I can't hear you, John. I'm sorry.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. In fairness to the town, when they started working on their budget, they were working off the governor's budget. And in the governor's budget, it said that they could take X amount of money. And they took the X amount that they could from Hampshire Regional, and they took the X amount from Norris as well. But as of last Thursday or Friday, when the Senate passed their version, after the House had already done it, that option's been removed. So my concern is that the town is still relying on that collective $130,000 between the two, when it doesn't seem at all possible. I mean, the governor can't, he can eliminate things by his veto power, but he can't put that section back in to the final budget, and it's already been cleared from both sides. Somehow, I guess somehow we need to be able to communicate that to the select board and to the town administrator. That they need to revise their number, because then that allows us to take the full 114 in here with the 230 and the ESSER 3, and then deploy the 344 over 3 years, which is basically acting as $110,000 offset to what we need from the town for 3 years. Problem becomes in year 4, we either eliminate all that stuff or we need an extra 110 in the budget to carry those things forward, but that's 4 years out.
So I guess I would revise my comments and say, I'm disturbed that when the town is given the option to take from Norris, they will exercise the option to take from Norris. Is that more accurate? It's not stealing candy from babies, but a little bit like that.
Hey, John,
Edward, yes, Ed. Ed,
I can take that back out with that information, but that is in there from actually the original governor's budget. And I can say he'll veto it, but if both the House and the Senate have taken it out, I'd say the chances of that veto staying are slim to none. So I will back that out.
Thanks, Ed. And
You're welcome.
No problem.
I could make some other comments, but I'm not going to stir the hornet's nest.
Okay, fair enough. So for, again, I'm thinking there is only one spot left in the Norris budget, and it has to be staffing. Because we've taken the $40,000 adjustment out of utilities. And the only way to, well, before we get to that, the only way to increase revenue within Norris outside of tax receipts is school choice. But the exercise that we just went through on class sizes doesn't really give room to increase school choice children, except for potentially, well, no, you wouldn't want to do it in kindergarten or first grade, because that's why you want to keep those numbers low. You get to second grade, you're at 19. So, I mean, we're already approaching that 20 in all the other grades. So there really isn't room to increase the enrollment by school choice. So that's not really an option for consideration. The only spot is left is staffing. So I have a question on, if we have 24 teachers and 4 specials, am I correct in classifying specials as teachers? They're
Yes,
not-
24 classroom teachers and 4 specialists.
Gets us to 28, but the budget has 33.
Right, then we have special ed teachers.
But wouldn't they be budgeted under special ed teachers? And
Oh,
not-
so I'm sorry, I don't have the budget in front of me.
So on line 60 of the budget is regular teacher salaries. The FTE is 33.3. In line 62, special ed teachers, the FTEs are 12. So I'm looking at, I understand that 33.3. I understand 24 to be classroom teachers, 4 of them to be specials. That's 28. That leaves 5.3 teachers doing something else, which
So you have your math interventionist would be in that.
Okay,
And then you have reading teachers,
Yep. 3,
3, and then you have
ELL, is ELL under there?
ELL is yes, yeah.
That's an English language learner teacher. We have 1.
Psychologist, maybe?
Nope, psychologist, adjustment counselor, nurses, that's all separate. And then you got the 4 specials. And then you got, that's all I see. And I can recount
that-
it.
yeah, I mean, that's good. That gets me to 33.
Yeah.
So. All right, so if I just take the total amount that's budgeted, and I know these are just averages, so they're not exact. But the 2.2 million I divided by 33.3, the average salary is $66,000. And I'm so. Yeah, so I'm not suggesting this at all, but if we were to take this from the teachers, we'd have to get rid of 3.5. We'd have to lay off 3.5 teachers to close that gap. So
Or according to my math, we could take in 88 school of choice students to close the budget gap.
A few too many students.
always multiple ways to look at it.
That would certainly pack the classrooms though.
A little bit. I can't agree to losing staff members. I mean,
No.
not in the like right after a pandemic. The students have already lost out on so much. People can say that they didn't lose out on education, but they did. I'm a teacher. I know they did. There was no way around it. It was given, and taking away staff is just going to do even more harm and put them even farther back.
And that brings up the compounding costs. It's just going to increase the needs of students, which will increase needs for students to have accommodations. And not that that's a bad thing. If students need it, that's what we're here for. But those accommodations cost. We have to support them. And so this is only going to get more dire if we're.
Are there any known retirements within Norris
Yes.
before next year? In not the individual unless they've already publicly announced, but what is the position?
Well, if it's a position with just one person in it,
Well, that's true.
and I do think Bobby could speak to whether or not she has budgeted at, let's say, $20,000 or more, less for the future of that position than the past, taking that into account. I'm not sure.
Yep, no, I did not. I kept the actual where those people would be. So the new people could come in lower. There could be a reduction. I don't know how great, but
how many retirements are we talking about?
Officially 2.
2, okay. And are they in positions that have scales or steps?
Doesn't every position?
Are you retiring? You're right.
Faculty, yes.
she'd probably like to.
After this meeting, she is.
I didn't say anything, did I?
So could we go through, I mean, if they're budgeted at what they are right now, my guess is if they're retiring, they're at the top of the scale. And as all the contracts have been redone, and specifically if they're within the association, that whole base was reset to a geographic area. So unless it's somebody coming in with a lot of experience, they should be at the bottom. So I guess what I'm saying is we should be able to make an adjustment to this budget of some dollars, and not necessarily go from step 8 to step 1. But and now, I mean, I do think there'd be a comma in that number, which is why I think we should put something in. If there wasn't a comma, I'd say we're chasing pennies. But I don't want to be the lone voice on this. So what do others think?
John, it may also impact if those last 2 cuts are made, that may negate some of what you're suggesting.
I see line 26 and 27 of what's on
Yeah.
the screen right now.
Right.
Which is why there wasn't necessarily a lot of public pushback from anybody on those 2 spots if they're in theory being tied into retirements. Okay.
So the 223,884 gap includes already a reduced faculty, 2 reduced people? Okay.
Yeah, if we stopped here,
It's 329.
that's the gap. If you then do this very hard part, then that's the gap. Yeah. Yeah. And if you stop up here, that's the gap.
Yeah, and I hate to bring this up again, but I still don't think that gap number is right.
Right. Well, it's based on this number here, which
Is not right.
yeah,
That's a placeholder number. That is not the number that it should be compared to, which is, and if you look at your budget report, and again, this is, where am I? Line 188,
Oh, okay.
FY21 budget is 4810263.
Right.
The
That-
4918 was the assumption that your numbers would go up by, I think it was 2.5%. Ed can correct me on that, but
That's
so that was assumed what you would increase to. So if you're comparing, the exercise is to compare projections for 2022 against actual 2021 budget. That makes that deficit up another 108,000, 108,231.
yeah. All right. We have to keep this number in mind then right here. In
Yeah.
addition,
well,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the 4810 was the expiring budget, but
Right.
If-
And that's what all the other departments are doing their exercises on as well.
So they're using, sorry, this is Bobby. So they're using the FY21 amount, the level funded amount. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yep.
0 increase. So that means all contractual increases, everything across the board, we got to pull within the budget. Not only can we not improve services at all or restore the services that got cut last year, although the funding was restored afterwards. So that is a mute issue.
But again, that doesn't change your assessments. Your analysis of your people and classroom and all that kind of stuff. It's just,
Right.
I'm just saying the number's different, that's all.
that
Hey,
108 needs to be added to these 3 numbers in the red. Yeah.
Right. Ed, was that
John,
you?
Zach Gibson.
Go ahead, Ed.
And I just want to remind the school committee of one other piece, and you are talking about the operational budget. There are 2 other line items that how we budget are separate from this. One is the local school, the local transportation, which I know doesn't count towards net school spending, but that has $100,000 more than the increase that I put in there for a placeholder for it.
Right.
And then the other is vocational tuition, which I had increased from like 982 to $1.5 million, but the placeholder in that draft school budget right now is $1.2 million. That's another 128,000 over what I put in that line item for a placeholder.
Yep.
The town has never budgeted vocational in full based on past history, but
No, we haven't, and I still think $1.2 million is high. So I'd love to work with you on that one, Bobby, to see if we can figure out what's probably reasonable by past history on that one.
yep, we can certainly do that.
Thanks.
Was there any further development on the talk about a van?
I did send out a quote to everybody for a wheelchair van. The problem is that I typically go through MHQ to get vans, and their ordering for 21 is done. But they would take orders for 22, would be delivered sometime, I believe he said, in December of 22. If you purchased a van, it would really take care of, it could take care of 2 of the 4 routes, which would be a savings in the, would pay for the van in the first year. I sent that also to Matt Rowland for Capital Committee, but I have not heard back from him. And nor did I get any feedback from anyone else other than what I had sent for that email.
Ken, I just forwarded it to you.
What's that?
I just forwarded it to you, the details.
Bobby, when did you send that to me?
Would have been Tuesday.
I will check, but I do not recall, like Tuesday, like yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just look for it now, and I'll report back to you. I'll text you or something if I haven't gotten it.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Is there any other provider of vans that we can talk to?
We
I don't
can
know who MHQ is, but
either have to go out to bid, or you'll have to get somebody who's on the state bid list. It's
Yep.
not like you could probably go to a normal, vendor that's around here, like say a Kia or something, to get a van, because they don't know how, or they don't deal with the 7D requirements that we would need. So then if you did just purchase it, I'm not saying it's not something we couldn't do, but I'd have to really look into it, because then you'd have to find somebody who would do the 7D equipping. And then you would have to, like I say, go out to bid for that as well. And then I don't know if they'd offer that same sort of leasing, because they don't typically have that sort of a lease. They typically lease, and then they have a buyout, which with the MHQ you don't have.
now you say that would only take care of 2 children. Is that because they're ramparts away? Their distances.
Right, there's 4 different students in different areas, but we were thinking that maybe we could save on the other 2 kiddos.
Yep.
By contacting the parents and seeing if we couldn't get an agreement with them, which has not happened yet, but it's something that we were hoping we could do, knowing that that was already under that 100,000. Under budgeted by 100,000, so. So then saying that that van, we took the 2 kiddos that we think would have to be transported for sure. And they do cover a distance, but not undoable distance. And just with those 2 kiddos, that would pay for the van in 1 year, like I said.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, I'm happy to go forward and do anything else that anybody wants. It's just, I have to get direction.
Yep.
Are we gaining an out of school, out of district person? Because the principal's report said 3.
It is budgeted for 1 that is unfortunately, I would say, on their way.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Okay.
And I guess I was looking over my notes, and this probably is not a big number, but some of the tuitions for those children include summer expenses. Why is that?
If it's, well, I'm not,
Because a child's IEP, I'm sorry, John.
no, I was just saying, I'm not the expert on that. Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, I'm not sure if Nancy's here or not, but when we develop an IEP for student and individual educational plan, it also includes summer services due to regression. So if a student is not in school over the summer, they will regress. So we have to provide services during the summer.
And that's not for all, students on IEPs. These are kids with extreme needs.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Thoughts? So why? I say this just to move the conversation. So why would we not look to utilize the full impact of ESSER all next year? Right, because if we're looking to use what, maybe 100, 110, give or take, and
Yeah.
not leaving 230 there. I understand Ken's comment about, zero funding. But basically, if we use the entire reserve, that could be used over 3 years. In year 1, we end up, we could come in at the 2.25%. It's not the 0, but that creates a whole bigger issue the following year. Where here we're looking to move it out over 3 years. And
Yeah, I would. Are you, sorry, John, you ready for an answer yet? Or are you still?
oh no, yeah, I'm just
formulating the.
I'm just, if I'm sitting on the other side of the table at the select
Yeah.
board, I guess that's a question that I would have. So
Well, I would say if you look at these 2 jobs in particular, I would not be comfortable hiring those people with that approach, because you really wouldn't have any path for sustaining them as employees beyond 1 year. It's a little different paying for, if we were paying for the purchase of computers, or we were just trying to get by with this out of district cost, and we hoped fewer kids would be out of district. So you could make a logical case to use more of the ESSER money to reduce that gap, but then I would recommend that you don't bring on these additional positions.
right, and if we stay the suggested course and utilize the ESSER funds for the 3 years, those 2 positions would be new, right? Because we're not increasing the hours of an existing employee, correct? Right, so these would be new.
Well, the BCBA is the other half of an existing position, at least on paper, I think.
No, I thought on Monday night, we wanted 1 new one, and we decided to just fund a half a new one. I don't think there's an existing BCBA doing 0.5
There's existing in the budget now,
in the budget, but not somebody employed.
correct?
Right.
Okay.
So would those two positions be and I'm going over to the city side. Would those two positions be similar to whatever the name of the grant is on the fire department to bring in surplus firefighters? Would they be signing off, acknowledging the fact that this is a 3-year grant-funded position, which then, in essence, makes it ineligible for benefits because it's a grant position? Or would they be coming in from their perspective as an employee? Doesn't matter where the money comes from. We happen to pay it for 3 years there. Then there's an expectation that this would continue in year 4.
Yeah, schools, Bobby can maybe give you a more detailed answer, but schools almost always do the second category. I'm not familiar with that first approach happening in a school.
Right. So typically when you do hire, you do put the caveat that the position is contingent on continued grant funding. So that they are well aware that that is not, but they do get hired just as a regular teacher that's on board, that counts towards their service, they get the benefits, etc.
With the caveat that when the grant expires, if we don't have the funding to put in place, it's a separation. There's no unemployment claims.
We can run that, through legal too, but yeah, that's how we've always done it.
John or Michael, I don't know if 2 nights ago you voted, I'm sorry, to eliminate the 17,256 and the 37,163. Am I right? Why is this on here again? So have we changed that thought that now we're going to pay for it with ESSER?
So they're using the original numbers before we actually cut them out of the budget. But yeah, I think just to show that we were going to remove them, but now we keep them, but pay for them with grant funding.
So your vote, you got to do something with that vote, don't you?
Yes, if you went this route, you would, yeah.
Well, the vote is still cutting it from the budget. We would then have to vote to authorize.
Right, but
Yeah.
But now it's not being cut from the budget, it's back in.
No.
Because now you're going to pay for it with ESSER.
Right, but that's outside of the operational budget. The
Right.
grant funds.
But you probably want to vote, to be clear, you probably want to vote to say you want to staff that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, because your vote said you're going to eliminate it.
Right.
Right. We cut it from the tax revenues,
Right.
which is our general operating budget. And here it's being suggested it comes in grants, which would be down underneath.
Yeah, and that was the same with the 47 too.
Yeah, all the votes on the top section.
Yeah.
Well, that's why those are just listed as removes.
Yeah. Those are still removed, yeah. The 47.
Right.
Okay, so go ahead, Austin.
To read the silence of the committee. My silence is because I'm not willing to cut people. So if it's a cut that involves people, it will not get my vote at this point. If we can,
That's my thought as well.
if we can come up with other things that are not going to seriously impact the safety or the ability of the children to get the education that they need and not lead to further learning loss, then I'm all for it. But I've been over the budget several times too, and I can't find that line. So I feel stuck.
Can I just interject, because this is a different audience, and John, if you'll allow it, if not, that's fine. It's not, I'm kind of coming out of turn here as a select board member.
Excuse me, Matt, can we just, I think there's still something on the table here, and that was whether or not it was wise for us to use all of the ESSER funds. Did we get that resolved?
Only that, yes, I posed the question, and the superintendent would recommend against that, doing it all in 1 year.
Okay, all right.
Well, I wouldn't, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend not doing that. I would recommend not doing that and bringing on those additional positions. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
So Matt, we did get to your spot on the agenda, and I bypassed you since you weren't here. You can certainly chime in now as a select board member, and then wherever you want to go.
Okay, and I'd be deeply apologetic of that, and no excuses here, but I'm gonna break some ice here with you folks, just because this is a very difficult and challenging task. We're not new to this, so we're gonna have to be responsible here. But let me just pose the following scenario here: break some ice, get some discussion going. There's a lot of people on this call. There's a lot at stake here. We know this. Many of the school committee members came to the select board meeting the last night. They know the state of our budget and the town's budget, and they know the consequences here. So like, I'm just going to report on facts here. It's not what I want to see happen. I want what everybody wants here. And obviously I share the sentiments of the fact that we don't want to be touching people, and we certainly don't want to be increasing class sizes and affecting the students here. At the end of the day, the matter of process that has to take place in our town by state law, we have to propose a balanced budget to the town. Like, that has to happen. And the balanced budget by law can only go up by 2.5% over the preceding year. And that encompasses our entire town's budget. Tomorrow night, the select board is going to be taking up our budget. We have to come up with what is considered to be a balanced budget for the town that would otherwise put us into next year with no legal consequences and no ramifications. Like, these things have to happen. We are going to arrive at that. However, and it's going to be extremely painful. So like, I get that you guys don't want to cut staff to get to arrive at what would ultimately be a balanced budget for our town. But if you can't do it, then we're going to have to do it. And we're not going to do it as educatedly as you will. And so that's just number one. That is not where I want to go, but that has to happen as a matter of process. Where I would love to see, especially with, there's a number of people on this call stepping out on limbs here, but just want to break some ice. Like, I strongly believe, and it's not just because of the school, it is my position on select board that I believe this. There are other areas in town that require this as well. So this is not just about the school, but our town requires an override. It absolutely does. And if the people on this call are feeling it, I'm here to tell you that you're not alone. There's some other town departments that critically need it as well. And so the reason why I'm speaking up a little bit about this is I do support Superintendent Sullivan in that, like, let's direct a lot of our efforts to trying to get the correct override passed for this town that helps the school, helps other town departments. This is a school committee meeting, so I'm not going to make this about other town departments, but there's certainly other departments that need this as well, and will be in line in lockstep with you guys. And if we want to direct some of our efforts to, okay, we've got to balance the budget, this is super painful, but let's keep really good track of what we're losing and what we're cutting, so that we make sure that goes into a properly sized override budget, so that we're not looking at this again next year. And what I'm going at is, I do support Superintendent Sullivan that we shouldn't be using these stabilization style funds to prop up our budget, because then there's a chance that we don't arrive at a proper override budget and we're looking at this again. So like, if we're going to do it, we should do it right the first time, explain to the public why we're doing it, make sure that it's super conservative and everything that we need and nothing that we don't. And if we explain that well, I mean, I think, look, we've been changing culture here in Southampton for, I think, 3 or 4 years. We've established a level of transparency that's great. I think we can do this. I mean, I think we just need to start focusing our efforts on that. Like, do the hard work. I hate to say it, but we have to do this. I think you all know that. And then let's just start campaigning and focusing our efforts on why we need to do an override in town with good explanations and good reasons. And that's pretty much all I have to say, because I believe it.
Thanks, Matt. So procedurally wise, by the conclusion of tonight, I'm going to ask for a vote on the budget, whatever that number ends up being. Assuming it passes, that budget goes to the town. Finance committee will give an opinion as to whether to support it or vote it up or vote it down. And then that, my understanding is, anybody can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, is whatever budget we pass has to go to the voters. And if we pass a budget like this, it's probably going to have a recommendation from finance not to support and select board as well. The town then has to have a budget that balances based on whatever our number is. So if ours goes down, everything goes down, and then the town puts a budget up, which would be, and they would pick our number. They don't dive into the line items, say, well, you're going to eliminate X number of staff or all that. It's just, here's the number. And then it comes back to us, and that's the number we have to work with. And I'm not hearing anybody correct me, so go ahead.
It was a little confusing between what you just said and what Matt was saying, because it seems
what Matt's saying is, if we send our budget, we send the budget over, and the decision is made not to seek an override. They, our budget. If we're, well, here, if we're 223,000 over, or 130,000, sorry, 330,000 over, and last night the town said they were $800,000 over their budget. I mean, that means they've got to find the 800,000 on the town side. So they're gonna, there's no way to do it, because you're just gonna have to slash that budget so much on the town side to make it work that it'll get voted down. Then they'll put up, the town then is required to put up a new budget, which we won't have any say in. We'll get X number. We'll probably get our expiring budget, well, hopefully with 2 or 2.25% increase, and then that comes back to us, and we've got to make that work. Yes, there's the whole ESSER pieces and all that to work with. So potentially there's going to be 2 budgets. Now, we may send this over to the town, and they may look at it and, okay, well, if we're going to do this and we need to go for the override, I think that's where Matt was going between the lines. Let's go for a true override. And for those that were at the select board meeting last night, you kind of saw some foreshadowing of what some folks were thinking about doing. And I suspect this is going to be a very large override if that's the direction the select board. But we don't have a say or a decision as to whether or not an override is sought. We need to put forward a budget that we support, that we believe is truly what we need for Norris for the next year, without the bells and whistles, because the town can't, the community can't support that, which I get. So that being said, I'd like to talk a little bit about line 26 and 27 of the proposed reductions.
John, I think you've got a great understanding of it. So, yep.
So can we talk about, before I decide whether or not I'm going to support cutting a specials teacher and a classroom teacher, what I'm guessing the classroom teacher, the thought process is that grade 5 would go from 4 teachers to 3. If we were to do that. I guess I want to hear a little bit more about what's the impact if we vote to do that. What's it going to look like at Norris?
That's what I think it would look like.
Okay, and the
Like it.
special,
I'm sorry, John.
the line above it, the special reduce 1 faculty FTE specials teacher.
There would be 3.
So we
There
would
are 4
need-
now, there would be 3.
Right, and to be clear, there are 4 different specific specials. We don't have 2 gym specials. for
Right,
example. All right, so we'd be losing an entire program,
right.
to be named later.
So, right. And you said those earlier, right? It's, so art, music, phys ed,
Library
and
gym.
library. Yeah.
And phys ed is required, no matter what. So we're losing the librarian, an art teacher, or a music teacher.
Correct.
So
I feel like we were down one before and we survived. We didn't like it. It wasn't fun. Without having the 4 specialists, it makes teacher prep time incredibly challenging. But it has been done, and I can't see losing a classroom teacher though. I mean, I can't.
But when we did fully reopen, Allison, we did permanently long-term sub. And
Great.
Maybe that's wrong. Maybe it's just a regular sub versus long-term. But we did put somebody in that position to get that program out, who happened to be fully credentialed to do it.
I'm not saying it's a good thing to lose one, but I know that that is a little more doable and possible than losing the classroom teacher.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna cut specials, then let's just cut everything, go right back to MCAS, whatever we need for MCAS, that's all we're gonna do. Take the arts and humanities, take everything out of the system. That's my stance. So I can't support passing line 26 or 27. I mean,
I hear you.
so,
I mean, we saw the scores for the lower grades and we saw how much they were struggling with reading and how much you needed that extra reading support. And we don't know how the upper grades are struggling. We know they are, but we haven't visually seen anything like that yet. So to cut down even more, and let's just send them up to the next school, incredibly below grade level, and let them handle it. I can't knowingly do that to a student's education, especially one of them being my own child.
So I have a question for Eliza. I see a couple of different things above 26 and 27 that are people. So I'm specifically zeroing in on the math interventionist. That's the one that we currently have.
It was in the budget for this year. Half was in the budget for this year, and I believe half, we were trying to increase it by half to have 1 full position, which we have never had.
Yeah. So
Austin, could we just clarify that? The half position that you're recommending, not that you're recommending, that is being proposed to be cut, is in the current budget. Was it staffed?
It was not staffed.
So the
So
money
I
was
was-
in the budget, but there wasn't a person assigned to it.
Correct.
right. Yeah.
And I'll tell you why.
Well,
Because I was trying to be frugal because we had to reassign 4 staff members to teach the Florida virtual model. So I had 4 teachers physically not in the building anymore, moving over to the Florida virtual model and trying to support the students that were in school and opening up that 2nd grade. The money was going elsewhere. You know, I had to hire a full-time special education teacher to replace a teacher that went to Florida virtual. I had to open up a 2nd grade to keep the 6 feet physical distancing. I was in constant communication with Bobby and how are we paying for all of this? So I wasn't going to hire a math interventionist at that point.
So if I don't know if we even get a choice, but if it were a choice between an additional half-time math interventionist and an additional half-time sped teacher, which do you think would have a bigger negative effect on our population?
So we cut half of a sped teacher already, right?
Well, a new sped teacher.
Correct. Half of an increase of one additional sped teacher.
Yeah. We may have to do both, but I'm just
I
wondering,
know.
if push came to shove, which one do you think would get us further towards the end zone? Is it the sped teacher or the math interventionist?
It's so hard to say.
Yeah. Because is the math interventionist sort of general ed, or is that someone who supports special ed?
It's more general ed tier 2 intervention rather than special education. Before a child would go to special education, they would receive an intervention, which would be that in math.
So one kind of prevents.
And the difference is that the special ed teacher would allow us to differentiate instruction for special ed students, like I had explained, and I know it's hard to remember, and I'm not trying to say it to you in a negative way, but with our special ed students now who have some more significant needs, we need to differentiate our support for Orton Gillingham. So if I have a teacher who's certified in Orton Gillingham and students who need that support, I would rather have that teacher only do the student, support the students who need Orton Gillingham, when the other students who have other sort of reading disabilities that they need support for special ed services for, but not to the point of needing that Orton Gillingham, that teacher would take them. Same thing with math. I mean, we have special ed teachers who are focusing only on reading right now. I don't have anyone doing special ed math support. And with scheduling from K to 6, it's really hard to say, okay, so for this hour, I'm going to do reading with all of these kids in 4th grade, but at what point are you able to do math special ed services? So it's hard. It's hard. I mean, one's a preventative, the interventionist, and one is to support what we already have. So I would say the sped teacher, because I can still meet the needs of the students according to their IEP. I just can't go specialized if I don't have that sped teacher. So I would rather try to prevent students from going to special ed by giving them math intervention and cut the additional half-time special ed teacher first. I have a feeling they're both going to go.
Yeah. And what again is the line 24 specifically?
Reduce supplies, utilities, and other. That's just general. Bobby, you can probably explain that better than I can.
Yeah, we just, we would pick between different lines and shave off that amount of money. We'd have
Utilities like electric, gas, boiler, janitorial supplies, things like that, right?
And any other little lines that we could try to get enough to shave off $40,000.
Like those salary differentials maybe too.
Right. Well, again, depending on the outcome.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's a moot point. But yeah.
So
Today,
go ahead, Bobby.
I just want to make sure that answered Austin's question.
Yes, thank you.
So I think we have several options, but I think two of the primary options are it's not going to happen. But make a motion to cut X amount of money from salaries. And if it passes, then we have the balanced budget, so to speak, from the school to send over. I'm not sensing that there's a willingness from the committee to do that. So we know we're going to send a budget that exceeds the amount that we've been asked to send over. That then kind of forces the hand of an override question at the town. So what number are we going to send over? Since we're sending over a number that exceeds the number that we've been asked to send.
And just to let you know, Lucy Dalton had let me know that that definitely can't happen on this next meeting because the ballot's already been set. The override, if there is an override.
When did you talk to her about that?
Tuesday.
Before the select board meeting?
Yes, I believe so.
I think.
It's me again, John, if you want me to speak to that.
Absolutely.
It's Ed Gibson again. Actually, because the ballot's already set for the regular election, any override questions that would not have positions on it has a different timeline. So as long as, and the select board could call a special election for June 22nd for any ballot questions only. And that would be on a separate ballot. So the override, any override question or questions could be part of that. We just have to, the select board has to vote to call a special election on that day. We also have to notify the town clerk of that decision in a letter and actually notify her of the language of the specific ballot questions at least 35 days before that election. And I suggested to the select board that we build as much extra time in there over 35 days as possible.
Thank you, Ed.
You're welcome, John.
So hearing no more discussion, I think we need to zero our focus or laser our focus into what is the number that we're going to send over. I'll preface it by saying I do not believe we should restore all the cuts that we already approved, but you know that there's got to be some middle ground. You know, I for one am not in favor of 27 and 26. I know I'm only one voice, so I would want to add that 110, 111,000 back in. I could go along with how it's being proposed on the ESSER funds being used over 3 years. I like that approach. I think that's a compromise. I think that we would have to definitely articulate that in some sort of white paper / memo to share with the town. I know Ed is listening, but giving a document and a reasoning and our logical thought process to how we're looking to use these things over 3 years, but knowing that in the 4th year, we've got to figure something out. Because my guess is if this override passes, this can't be the town's not going to support a yearly override. Right, so 3 years now, 4 years down the road, we can't be going back and saying, well, we're out of ESSER money, so we need to do this. Austin makes valid points about looking at the other staff issues. Greg, you're awful quiet. Do you want to recommend a motion?
I'm torn. That's my problem.
Okay.
I mean, everybody's got a valid point here. I'm not one to speak if I don't have any specific input to give here, but
If
I mean, I can in good conscience, you know, pass anything that's going to have a budget cut on it. That's my perspective.
So you'd be of the opinion to restore all the cuts that we made Monday night?
Not all of them. I guess that's the nuance right now I'm trying to figure out.
Okay. Well, while we're thinking about that, if Austin, sorry, if we could just ask Kim, can we get a little bit more explanation on the one, is it the one-to-one? And stuff, Kim, would you mind?
Sure, not a problem. So the technology to support the one-to-one, I think that figure, what is it, $17,256. I'll back up just a little bit, but that's predicated on the fact that we did go one-to-one. And so with the one-to-one technology, we've got from kindergarten up until third grade, all the students have an iPad, and then 4 through 6, we have laptops. In addition to all those devices, we also have all the faculty and the staff have a device. So we've probably got about 610 devices in the school. Part of that 17,000, I can actually break it down for you, but that 17,256, in my mind, there's 2 different categories. There's infrastructure costs that we really, with all of these devices, there are some things that I would call infrastructure that we really need to maintain with this many devices. Specifically, there is about $6,749 worth of wiring that needs to be done in the building. A lot of the wiring does exist, but we, because we pulled it from another grant, we have extra. I think I spoke at another meeting about this, where we have some wiring that's sitting in the ceiling, but we need to start utilizing it. And the other component that I would consider infrastructure out of that 17 figure, it's called, it's in mobile device management licensing. And you may hear me say the term MOSL, but our MOSL MDM, mobile device management system, is what allows us to maintain all of those devices in a very automated way. Without it, it's really an infrastructure cost. That's about $3,000. The other category that's in here, other than infrastructure, is really software related. We've made a significant investment in time. Teachers have modified their curriculum in ways in which they utilize technology in the classroom for teaching and learning like they never have before. I've had teachers tell me, I always wanted to do this, but I never really had the time to do it. And not that they had the time to do it during the pandemic, but they had to do it. And there are many teachers I've spoken to who said they're going to continue with this because they've integrated and they've utilized the technology in the classroom in a way that they had wanted to, but never really had an opportunity to. And now I feel as if we can't support the software that they're using. The students have learned how to use Google Classroom. Within Google Classroom, they've used any parents or teachers on the call, they've used Cawley. Cawley is a wonderful tool to have students, demonstrate their learning. So if they're going to be using the computers, we're at one-to-one. There are software licensings like Seesaw and Cawley and potentially Zoom. And I'm going to put Zoom in there with a little caveat, but because that's sort of another category. But at least the stuff that's being used in the classroom, if we're going to continue down this path of utilizing and integrating technology into how we do in our practices, and I'm we could get off on a whole nother discussion about the benefits of that, but that's where pretty much the bulk of the rest of that 17,000 comes from, is some Cawley, Seesaw and Cawley licensing. Actually, it's not a lot, to be honest with you. I just went back to my figures. I'm sorry. It's about Seesaw is $1,375 a year if we were to maintain that licensing, and Cawley is equivalent, $1,375 as well. So those tools, I'd like to see to keep those tools available. The other thing would be the other big number actually that's in there is a $4,392, which is our Zoom licensing. I sure hope we don't need to license Zoom the way we did during the pandemic. But I think Austin pointed out earlier, we may not be out of this. And if we're not, and we need to, heaven forbid, but if we need to go back to remote classes again, and we need Zoom, we will need that licensing. So that's that Zoom dollar amount makes up part of that 17,000 as well.
When's that
So again,
for?
it's infrastructure and it's software related. The infrastructure part, I think, is really critical for us to make sure that we can kind of maintain that. And the software, again, I think if we were to I think it'd be a big step backward if we started removing some of these tools that teachers and students know how to use, especially because we're a one-to-one school now.
And Kim, while I have you on the spot here,
Okay.
if we do not increase the technology support position to a 1.0, we leave it at a 0.5. I mean, we're basically asking you to make do on that department all next year on what you did this year, except with everybody in the schools in that. But I'm assuming that your department's been running at 125% capacity already. How many years do you think you can sustain that?
With a one-to-one program, we wouldn't be able, what we're doing right now, we wouldn't be able to sustain very long. I mean, I understand the competing forces here, and I understand why that is on the cuts, given everything else that is really necessary for the school. And you're right, we have been working really hard to keep things going during the pandemic. It's been quite stressful on all the tech people across the district, as it is for teachers and administrators. But sustainable, if the question is specifically around sustainability, that we need to revisit that. We will need to revisit the way that we're supporting the technology. We've more than doubled, the number of devices. We've more the utilization of how we're doing things. It's all to good benefit, but to have the same model to support something that has grown exponentially is not sustainable. And so eventually, yes, I think I even prior to the pandemic, I've had conversations that we probably need to start thinking about changing the way that we're supporting technology, because our curriculum is digitized now. There's a lot of online resources. We've continuously, had to increase bandwidth, and we've put up Wi-Fi in all of our Wi-Fi hotspots in every learning space in the building didn't exist, 6 years ago. And so these types of things we've been growing, the number of devices in the school, the interactive projectors, the document cameras. It's more than just laptops. So there's a lot of other devices that exist in the school that's technology related, other than just the laptops and the one-to-one program that we have. There's other things as well. So, from my department's point of view, yes, that's something in the future that we need to continue to talk about.
Okay.
John,
Any other questions for Kim?
can I just pose a question? And I know I'm just a visitor here, but something was just talked about and it flashed in my head. Has anybody given any thought to the viability of continuing virtual classrooms?
Instead of in-person learning at the elementary level?
Yeah. I mean, the only reason I ask it is when Kim just mentioned the need to recertify with Zoom. I mean, those kinds of expenses and not having transportation. I don't know how quickly those things add up.
I'm gonna let the maybe Eliezer or Michael or someone to chime in on that.
I'm not sure what you mean by the viability of are you saying to support continuation of remote learning?
Yes.
Or,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, the Commissioner of Education has kind of ruled on that already.
Oh, that settles that then, huh? Okay.
That we have to provide in-person education. I mean, he gave us a deadline.
Okay.
I think that, for families who choose to stay remote. They are staying remote to the end of the year. But then I think the other thing that you might be thinking of is, do we want to become a virtual school? And I don't think that that's something that we have all our families are back except for 28 kids are staying remote for the rest of the year, as far as we know.
Yeah.
So everybody, most of the kids are in person right now.
Yeah, no, that was more economics based, I think.
Yeah.
I have a motion to put forward.
Can I ask one question first, Austin?
Go ahead.
Sorry, Aliza.
Yes.
What are your, I'm putting you on the spot here. What are your initial thoughts if we reduced custodial staff from 3.5 to 3 and shifted those dollars to IT?
From 3.5 to 3.
And basically take that half-time and just put a full-time technology person in there.
I mean, we have currently, I'm paying an additional 0.5 custodian to help with the cleaning and the sanitizing because of the pandemic. I mean, he'll be gone, and then to take another half away, I can't. You see how many kids are in the cafeteria at one time, and
Okay.
one person's in the cafeteria sweeping and picking up spills, and then someone gets sick in the bathroom. There's two. Who's working at night? I mean, it's just not viable to only have 3 full-time custodians in a building of almost 500 kids to clean all those bathrooms and everything that is vacuuming every single room every day. And if you have 2 on during the day and 1 say 11 to 7 or 2 to 10, or you can't get into the classrooms and vacuum anything until all the kids and teachers are gone.
Mhm.
So that work doesn't even start till 2:30, and that would be a one-man show. It's just
Okay,
impossible. But
fair enough.
yeah.
Austin?
Yeah, I was gonna put forth the motion to use ESSER funds to reduce the out-of-district tuition by $25,000.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Roll call. Allison?
Right on, aye.
Austin?
Rogers, aye.
Greg?
Bennett, aye.
Over, aye. Okay. So since we did that with the ESSER, what's the comfort level with lines 13, 14, and 15, funding those with ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds?
I'm fine with that.
What, Michael, one of the terms that's being out there in the general populace, I guess, and maybe it's just that it's also known as ESSER, but is there a difference between ESSER 2 and 3 and the American Recovery Act?
The American Recovery Act is the umbrella legislation that funds ESSER. So
would there be potential additional funds outside of ESSER?
I don't think going directly to schools, I do not know in that act what municipalities will receive, and whether or not they might be allowed to use any of those funds for education.
Similar to the CARES Act money?
Yeah.
And how that came down. Okay. So I don't know if, Ed, if you know anything on the town side that you might be able to share.
I can tell you what little I know about the American Recovery Act, and this is one of the probably most frustrating parts of my job over the last 2 months, if not longer. Town is supposed to receive approximately $1.8 million in American Recovery Funds over the 2 fiscal years, 21 and 22. We can spend that over a period of 4 years. Here's the frustrating part of it. About every 2 weeks, and it's federal funding, but the feds have not come out with the rules and regulations on it. About every 2 weeks, the state gives us an update and says they expect those rules and regulations in another couple of weeks, which hasn't happened yet, which would be great if they had happened before we put our budgets together. Because I think there's probably places in municipal budgets, and I know we have a little separation between municipal and schools, but as far, at least in my opinion, Norris School is a Southampton department and belongs to the town. So while we don't know the rules and regulations, I still think that some of those pieces that come down that we will be allowed to use this funding for may somewhat mimic the CARES Act. And in my mind, that it may be something like if you were actually hiring additional custodians on a part-time basis or what have you to keep up with the cleaning, I personally think that's good, has a very strong possibility of being eligible for those funds we'll be getting. I would also think that anything that has to do with technology, whether it's for remote learning or to shore up the learning in the classroom, that we can, shall we say, tie to COVID, whether that is the necessity to have students catch up over a year, if it's to maintain the viability of remote classrooms or whatever. I'm thinking that's going to very possibly come out in this American Recovery Act too. But like I say, probably the most frustrating piece of my life is they won't tell us exactly what we can use it for. So it really, while there's I think a strong possibility for some of these to use that funding for, and I'd be one that would lobby strongly that we don't exclude the schools from that. We really don't know the exact circumstances we'll be able to.
Okay. So I guess on number 4, on the line 13, technology to support the one-to-one right now, maybe the wording that we should be looking for on that one is to fund it from non-operating cash to be identified, whether it's, or just add ESSER 2, ESSER 3, American Recovery, whatever may be applicable, and restrain the ESSER, because I'm thinking the same thing with line 8. Because that whole position was created because we went to a one-to-one. We went to a one-to-one because of the COVID, and there's this chicken or the egg conversation. Here we're removing it from the budget, but
So do you want to do 14 and 15 first?
honestly, I'm thinking, because this is heading on Monday night, I was looking at this from the direction of how close can we get to that 2.25 number, and if we could get within 1%, if we were at 3.25 or something, then I was comfortable with sending that to the town. that's just not realistic without decimating the budget at Norris, which doesn't have 3 votes to do that. So now I take the other approach. It's like, if there's something here that we can spend, we're gonna have 1-time or 2-time expenses, 1 or 2 years, then yeah, put it on the ESSER. Otherwise, put it in the number and just add it to the override number. Because it's either gonna pass and it's a moot point, right? And everything's gonna come up, and to use Matt's words, the entire budget in the town is gonna write itself. Or it's gonna fail. And then we have the top lineup of where we're gonna start with the cuts and how far do we go. And then we're gonna have to go into staff. So it seems like we're sitting here struggling, trying to find the middle ground. Perhaps, except for eliminating line 9, which we already did because it's just not gonna work out contractually. Put it through.
So you're talking about restoring 10 and 8 and 12. Is that right?
I say we go back to the 5.5 initial request. We eliminate. Let's start with a blank slate. We go back to the 5.5 number. We back up, we eliminate the professional development at $47,000. Because that's already been eliminated by, it wasn't enacted, right? And then leave everything else there. I'm okay with line 25 of that funding source being the ESSER funds, not, to help alleviate the town. That sounds reasonable for me. I might even suggest that that's the only line we're going to use for ESSER funds, that maybe we even increase that number. But, and the technology, I think that's an ESSER, but I think the additional staff, I think all the staff positions have to get into the operating budget. And if the override passes, then done. If the override doesn't pass, then obviously any new positions are going to be the first ones to go to get us down to that $4.8 million number. And then we're going to have a very tough conversation about what other positions are going to be eliminated, because there's nowhere else to go. We shouldn't be sitting here struggling to find the middle ground.
Would you like that motion?
Sure.
All right, I'll make that motion. We go back to our original 5.585052 budget for approval and submission to the town.
But we are going to pull out the professional development for 47.
Right, exactly, because that's already been nullified by the union. So that's the contribution that we can make towards trying to make this better. So we take out that 47,267.
And does that motion, oh, sorry. So second.
Seconded by Austin. Discussion. Austin.
So does that motion supersede the one that we just did to reduce the out of district tuition?
Well, no, because out of district, that vote, that $25,000 isn't in that 5.5 number. Oh, wait a minute.
Is it?
It is. Out of district, yeah, Bobby's shaking her head, yes. So we have to reduce it by another 25,000 as well.
So it's a 25,000 from that line, in addition to the 47,267 from line 9 that we're backing out of the 5585052 number.
Correct.
All right. Would someone like to do the math there? Oh,
Mike is
excellent.
working on it.
I can see he's a master of Excel.
512785.
Thank you, sir. So then, yes, to clarify, my motion is to send a budget to the town of $5,512,785,000.
Okay. I already seconded it, but just for the record, second.
Yep. If there's no discussion, shall we call the vote?
I'm thinking.
Oh, okay.
So the only line item that I'm zeroing in is line 13. And so basically we're putting that back into the general fund, or what I call the general fund. Do we want to leave that in the general fund, or do we also want to recognize that is a non-employee position that clearly falls within the ESSER definition?
Sure, I'm reasonable for that.
But can't technically we do that on the back end if it doesn't get funded by an override?
Well, in the fair and equitable to all concerned, I would want to, because we're the four of you need to join me and Mrs. Buda that day at the town meetings and get up there to defend this. So I want to be able to say that, well, if it's a technology piece that isn't employee related and we have a grant that we already know we're getting, we're using that money there. What we're not using grant money for is to fund positions and employees that belong in the operating budget. I think yes, it's only $17,000, but it's a stronger case for us to present, I think.
It's an important distinction to make, and it's yet one more good faith effort that we're making. We can show the town that we've already done to take all that we can out of this without causing massive damage to the students.
So then can I propose the amendment to the motion that we take the 17,256 out of the operating budget and use the ESSER 2 and 3 grant funding to support that line?
Absolutely, I accept that amendment.
Good.
So resident math whizzes, what does that come up with for a new budget submission?
Michael, did you already reduce it from
We
the
already-
5.5?
I think we already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right? No.
I don't,
Oh, no, we didn't.
nope.
I don't think so.
So we're reducing it by 17,256, is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Well, we took that, did we take that out? We already took that out,
What do you mean?
When you voted the other night,
right, when you voted on Monday
Right.
night.
but it doesn't make any difference now because you've gone back up to the original number.
Right, so
Yeah.
Bobby, we rescinded all the changes on Monday night.
Okay, so okay, all right. You went back up to the original, let me just see what I got. I want to make sure I'm,
17,256.
okay, I'm good with that then. Yep.
So that makes our request 5,495,529.
Right.
Any more discussion? Roll call. Austin,
Rogers, aye.
Greg,
Bennett, I.
Allison,
Radon, aye.
and Lumbra, aye. Any other matters under 22 budget before we get to the capital?
Yeah, I would just say to any Southampton voters that are on the line, it's extremely important that you talk to everyone you know in town about what's going on here tonight, and that you post online about it, that you call your friends and family in town about it, because we will most definitely need your support when it comes to passing the inevitable override that I think is going to get pushed. Not a sure thing, but I'm anticipating is pushed by the town. We
Yeah.
definitely need your support. We do not want to cut any staff people, and we would love to add support to the students that need it at our school. We need more bodies, not less bodies. So please help us do that.
Is the select board meeting again tomorrow night? And
Yes, yes.
so that
6:45, I think it is.
will follow up. This conversation will continue on the town side tomorrow, or the select board side tomorrow at 6:45. So, you know, the best way to get informed is to join the meeting and just listen in on everything. Capital items request. I did see
I did send a document today.
and I believe what I saw on yours, everything was presented last night as approved to move forward.
Okay. Excellent. Do you want me to share it now, just so everybody sees it?
Yes, please.
Yeah, we can just spend a minute or two going down it.
So the submitted items that we have requested for capital improvements at Norris in priority from 1 through 6, number 1 being the highest priority. The cracks in the sidewalk repair at $9,000, carpeting for rooms that are listed, and this would mean that all the carpeting would be replaced at this point and or up to date, let's say. We did the whole second floor, I don't know, 2 years ago, and then this would be the old wing by the where the 5th and 6th grades are, and the counselor's room and the music room. And then number 3, repair major masonry issues above the main entrances. So this is near the preschool kindergarten entryway and the main entryway. And then there's minor structural and masonry into the entranceway of the main entrance. When you walk in, if you see the ceiling, there's peeling, everything's just peeling and crumbling up above. And then interior classroom doors and new interior fire doors and closers, which are the arms that, you know, swing the door open and closed, at the tune of $5,910. And that's basically in the old wing as well. So there have been times when we've had lockdowns with the police department. Of course, during COVID right now, we haven't been practicing those things with the police department, but they're old wooden doors. This would give us, it's for safety and security, and they're old and the glass is 1 pane. And so this is something that has been on our plan. And then something that's been on the plan for several years, and we kick the can down the road, are the vertical blinds in the cafeteria. It may not seem like a big deal because they're way up high and you don't see them, but anytime that we want to have a function in the cafeteria using the stage or projecting something onto the screen, the light that comes into the cafeteria overwhelms anything that you can't see anything. You can't show a movie, you can't show a production, you can't, because of too much light is getting into the cafeteria because the blinds are broken. Some of them are missing. They don't close. It also will help us reduce the heat in the cafeteria if we get these blinds. So the total ask is $89,605, and I really appreciate if the Capital Improvement Committee has put that forth for the town voters to say yes to. That would be great. So thank you for that update. Does anybody have any questions?
Good news. We approve them as capital. We all need some good news here. Capital can be approved. Those things put towards the voters, they'll be funded out of the capital stabilization account if approved.
Okay, thank you very much. And I want to thank my head custodian, Tom, because he really put that all together kind of at the last minute. When I heard that the capital committee was meeting, Ed gave me the paperwork, and Tom was already working on these things prior to, so that as soon as we received the paperwork, we were able to submit that, and we got it in, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, next on the agenda is under policy consideration, handling complaints to the school committee. I'd ask that we table that discussion until further notice, as the 5-district working committee is currently drafting language that would uniform that policy across all 5 districts. No objection, we'll table that. Old business pandemic response update. We've seen the last numbers that came out last Thursday, continue to track down or trail down and make steady progress. I do have a question about an announcement that was made yesterday. And given the work everybody was on today, maybe hasn't had time to process it, but the governor has declared that this Friday, the wearing of masks outdoors where you're able to social distance is no longer required. Are we following that on Monday? Can we?
It did say large groups though, so I think it will depend on how many are outside.
Yeah, and I think it's 250. So I guess I'm specifically thinking about recess and that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Still, you know.
We're working on a memo for all the schools about these changes. Hopefully we'll have it by Friday morning, if not later, sometime tomorrow.
Okay.
But I think we're still going to be expecting the masks at recess.
Okay, and then I assume, as we have done in the past, you guys will share that by the email blast.
Yeah, to families and to staff and school committee. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else on the pandemic response? No. Okay.
It is nice to mention that the number of cases in Southampton is down below what it was, on Veterans Day in mid-November. So that's really good, great to see.
Under new business, we have school bus ridership request and bus ridership distance policy. The two kind of go hand in hand. We can start with the ridership request, and I know
We have two.
Okay.
I added them to the sheet that I shared with you that has redacted, no names, just addresses or streets. One is on Maple Street. It's a second grader. Has been, that route has been deemed unsafe previously because of Route 10 and no sidewalk where the cemetery is there. And it's a second grader. So there's that one. And then the other one is the owner of Clown Around Preschool is requesting the students that are dropped off there get to ride the bus to Norris and back there from Norris. It's 5 students. All of those students actually live further than 2 miles from Norris anyway. So they would qualify for a bus, but because their daycare is like 1.3 miles away, I believe, they don't qualify, the owner or someone has been transporting them back and forth, but now we're full and she's having a hard time doing that. The good news is if you were to accept that and allow those students to ride the bus and go to that daycare or that preschool, excuse me, it's a preschool daycare for them, I suppose. This would eliminate a bunch of kids at the parent pickup line, 5 kids who would now get on the bus. I believe it's 1 vehicle though, but still it's still 1 less vehicle in that pickup drop-off line. So there are those 2 requests.
Have we thought about increasing the distance again like we used to now that all the regulations have been uplifted?
That's next on our agenda.
Oh, well, we said they go hand in hand because I'm looking at, if we're approving it, I already know 2 other people who live right next door on Maple Street who will be like, oh, look, there's the bus. Why is my neighbor getting on the bus and not me? And then we're going to get another letter and another letter.
Oh yeah. And
like it's just.
I think, parents have been really good about, I think people do know that bus requests have happened and kids are on the bus who live under 2 miles. But each one that you've looked at had a reason. So I had failed to say, you know, the parent who has requested bus service on Maple Street, although, you know, within the 2 miles, the parents have to return back to work, and the timing of waiting at the bus stop, not the timing of waiting at the bus stop, but the timing of bringing the kiddo to school and in the pick drop off line is later than if they were to take the bus and get on the bus earlier, and the parents have to go to work. So when parents were working from home, that wasn't an issue, but now the parents are returning to work, it's an issue. So that's it. I mean, people say, you know, what their hardship is, and that's the hardship. There's no sidewalks for their kid to walk. The parents are going to work and they're requesting bus service. I think everybody's been really good, because I thought when we first started to, when you first started to approve these bus requests, we were going to be flooded, and people have just been really good about dropping off and picking up their kids. And I know that line is insane. The buses are not full by any means. We have 2 buses that are, have say 23 kids on it. But we can get to 48. Well, I've heard 47 or 48, so we're not near capacity on any of the buses.
That's why I want to skip ahead to the next part, John.
Well, yeah, like, what, do you know the distance between Maple Street and the school? What mileage?
Closer than me.
Oh,
I'm
no.
about 1.8, and you know where I live, and they're farther up. They're closer.
They're closer. So I think it's what did I say for?
It's got to be like a
1.4,
1.5, 1.4. It's around there.
Yeah, it's less than 1.5.
Okay.
Because I know that's what you're thinking.
Yep. Okay. Well, I think for procedurally, I think we should just approve these to get them on. In the off chance that if we do change the mileage, that 2 weeks down the road we have to revert back. So I think Maple Street, I'll make the motion to approve Maple Street, and the Clown Around Preschool, I'll make the motion that it's a bulk pickup for the reasons stated. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Austin. Discussion. Hearing none. Roll call. Allison.
I'm reluctant, but right on I.
Greg.
Bennett, aye.
Austin.
Rogers, aye.
And Lumber, aye. Now, reduce consideration to reduce the shut off for busing from a 2-mile radius to something less, all the way potentially down to 0, where we started. Is there a recommendation for us to consider?
I would, if I can, if that's who you're talking to, I would rather go down to 1.5 and see how it goes before going a full mile. And the tricky part is that, you know, Heidi at the bus company is out right now, and she is the master bus manager. So without her, having her right now, I would hate to go down a whole mile and not be able to, you know, figure out what does that mean? I mean, we've looked at it already. We could go down a half a mile and feel comfortable with that and see who's willing to put their child on the bus. And if a couple weeks we still have room, then we could go down to a mile. But I think we start with half-mile increments.
Obviously not right now, but do you have still, when we did before, like the radius and the numbers? Do you remember, like we even said, like if we went down to when this whole first started, and not right now, trust me, I don't expect you to go find it, but is that saved somewhere?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, I never looked at it. I don't know who.
Right,
had
right,
it,
right.
but, you know, we could figure that out.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we reduce the 2.0 or greater restriction on busing to 1.5 and that it remain at 1.5 until at least May 14th, at which time the administration at its on its own, if it deems it appropriate, may reduce it further to 1.0. So you don't, so we're gonna go to 1.5, we're gonna run it for at least 2 weeks, see how that goes. And then you don't need to wait for the school committee to meet on May 26th, which then we only have a few weeks left of school. If it is feasible to go lower to the 1.0 or somewhere in between, then just communicate it and do it, or hold it to 1.5.
Okay, so what happened with May 14th?
You go to 1.5 now, or whatever it can happen.
Until May 14th
And then
Or-
after
or
May
longer.
14th,
or
After-
longer, and then,
yeah, or longer, but anytime after May 14th, you can continue to move it down
okay,
without further action by the school committee.
okay.
Bobby?
I just want to clarify that you're okay following the guidance that is out.
That sounds like a loaded question.
As far as the spacing goes for the kiddos.
I think in the letter to parents, that needs to just be made aware.
The current guidance says there is no space. You can. pass
Exactly.
Elementary,
1.5,
right. For elementary, and we have siblings sitting together.
Yep.
Mhm.
So I want to second John's motion.
Discussion?
When was the start date? Sorry.
It can start whenever it can. Generally, it
Right.
takes up to 5 days for the buses to rework it. So I'm
Right.
imagining maybe Monday at the earliest, but
I will call them tomorrow and tell them, and then see when we can start, and then send the letter out to parents, letting them know.
okay. Roll call. Allison,
Right on, aye.
Greg,
Bennett, I.
Austin,
Rogers, aye.
Lumbra, aye. Passes. There being no further items on the agenda,
I hate to be that guy. But this was not notified to the chair beforehand. So I'd like to raise one more quick point, since we have all the important players in the room, minus Julianne, of course. So the district that I grew up in had a policy for busing that if you lived within the 2-mile radius, then you were still eligible for busing, but you had to buy a bus pass. And I remember because my home was like 1.98 miles from the school, and my mom was really mad about it at the time. So I looked it up in my home district, and they're still doing it. And so I'm wondering, is this something that we want to entertain at all? Knowing that, you know, times are tight, this is a cost. And if not, why is that a bad idea?
I know we've done it in the past. We actually did all the work. We got everything done. We did all the distancing and put out the letters, created the bus passes, and charged for a year, and then school committee voted not to in the following year. So,
We did charge, there was a charge for a little while. I do remember that.
I think the hard part is the capacity of our resources to actually collect that money and keep track of. I think what I find what's difficult and is that we deemed some of these places unsafe to walk, and then we're going to charge people, you know, I mean, I'm just saying it, I'm not saying, you know.
It didn't go over well when there was the charge, Austin.
But I understand we also need money.
Yeah.
Town needs
Yeah.
money for transportation, resources.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. I guess on its face, I love the idea, but
Mhm.
as was shown when we went to the 2 mile, we didn't save any money. I mean, whether we're at 2 miles or we're at 0, we require the same exact number of buses. So I would be all in favor of it if it meant that we had to, because we lowered the distance, we had to add 2 buses. But that's not our case. Our population may get to that point where, okay, in order to do this, we have to add buses, which is then adding expense. But especially with the vote that we just took, to send the budget the way we did and to ask for an override, that override and the budget as a whole will support the existing busing we have, that I'd be hard pressed to support it without any new expenses to offset.
The school of choice students pay.
They as individuals or the sending community?
The parents.
Okay, so, and that money goes where? Into the school choice account, or does it offset the expense? Or does it go to Hampshire Regional?
No, it goes to the
No.
town. It goes to the town.
Oh, to the town. And the town pays the transportation bill anyways, right? So it's an offset. Okay. All right.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. I think that that's a solid reason. That was just, I wanted to be able to think through it out loud together to evaluate the idea. But I think that that's a good reason. You know, it doesn't necessarily save us money. And so, you know, why do that?
Right.
All right.
Okay, so we did everything we needed to accomplish tonight. Again, for the school committee, well, for members of the public and the school committee, I would encourage everybody that can to attend the select board meeting tomorrow night at 6:45. And also remind everybody that the annual town meeting to approve any questions or overrides is June 12th at 10 a.m. at LaBrie Field. And that the school committee members should just be aware of everything that's going on and know that, you know, we may need to call a special meeting in the next week or so, because what we sent back to the town, if they end up coming back saying the number is XYZ so much, and, you know, is there any way we can find 40,000 because we don't think this 7-figure number is going to pass? Tune in tomorrow night to the select board, listen to everything, and then see how things go.
John, before you adjourn, can I ask a logistical question?
Sure.
This meeting's being recorded, right? Video wise?
Correct.
Is it available? And if so, when and how?
Available for which purpose?
To review?
Well, we do turn it over to Easthampton Media.
Okay.
It usually takes this particular meeting tonight is under my account, so it comes down on my corporate side. So in the morning, the recording will be there. I send it over to Easthampton Media, and usually within 2 to 3 days, they turn around.
Okay.
And it'll be up on that.
Okay. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All right.
Before 8, woo.
Ooh, it's a new
Thank you,
record.
everybody.
We started at 5 though.
True.
Oh, that's why.
Thank you.
Have a
folks.
good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Good night.
joining us, Ken.
Good night now.